She only stopped for a coffee. 10 minutes later, she was face down on the hood of her car, cuffed and humiliated, and they still hadn't even told her why. The morning had started like any other. Cool breeze, the city humming awake, and the familiar scent of roasted beans drifting from Java Junction, her favorite little coffee shop off 14th Street. Danielle Carter wasn't thinking about trouble. She was thinking about the meeting she had at noon, the pitch she had to deliver, and whether she'd remembered to email her assistant the updated slides. The lot was almost empty when she pulled in. She parked neatly, double-checked the meter, and headed inside. Her caramel latte was ready before she even reached the counter. The barista knew her by name. But when Danielle returned to her car, cup in hand, there was a squad cruiser idling behind it. At first, she thought nothing of it. Maybe they were on break, or checking the lot for suspicious activity. She'd seen them around before. No big deal. But as she reached for her driver's side door, the voice came sharp. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." She turned, puzzled. "Is there a problem, officer?" Two officers approached. One tall, broad-shouldered, mirrored sunglasses masking his eyes. The other younger, hand resting casually but deliberately near his holster. License and registration. The tall one didn't answer her question. Danielle handed over both without hesitation. She kept her tone polite. "Stay calm. Don't escalate. Do you own this vehicle?" "Yes." "Got proof?" "The registration is right there in your hand." The tall officer glanced at it, then back at her, expression unchanged. "Stay where you are." Danielle felt the first prickle of anxiety. She glanced around. Two passers-by had stopped on the sidewalk, watching. "Is there an issue?" she asked again, more firmly this time. "Vehicle matching this description was reported stolen," the younger cop said. His voice was flat, rehearsed, like he'd already decided she was guilty. Danielle blinked. Stolen? This was her car, registered in her name, paid off last spring. "That's a mistake," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Run the VIN, it'll clear this up." But they weren't listening. "Step away from the vehicle." She tried to hand them her insurance card. The tall officer batted it away. "I said, step away." Her heart raced now, not just from fear, but from something sharper, rage. "Officer, you have my documents. There's no reason to treat me this way." The younger cop moved behind her. She heard the telltale click of handcuffs. "Resisting, huh?" the tall one muttered. "Should have just complied." Before she could protest, her arms were yanked back. Metal bit into her wrists. Her latte crashed to the ground, splattering like spilled paint across the asphalt. And then she was shoved forward, cheek pressing cold against the hood of her own car. No rights read, no explanation, no hesitation. Just the assumption she must have done something. The crowd was growing. Phones came out. Faces showed a mixture of concern and that quiet, familiar fear. Fear of what might happen next. Danielle closed her eyes, forcing her breath to stay even. "Stay calm. Stay sharp. You're not powerless." She wasn't. She knew who to call. But first, she needed to see just how far they were willing to go. And from the look in their eyes, they were ready to go all the way. The tall officer's tone had already shifted the moment he saw her. What began as a simple question about parking had turned into something uglier. "Step out of the vehicle now." Danielle kept her posture straight, breathing slow. She had learned over the years that fear only fed their assumptions. If she looked nervous, she'd look guilty. If she looked confident, she'd look defiant. Either way, the outcome rarely changed. "Officer, as I already told you, out. Now." The second officer circled behind her again, too close. His fingertips brushed the leather strap of his holster. It wasn't a threat yet, but it was a warning. "This car was flagged in an alert earlier today," the tall one said. "Matches the description of a stolen vehicle." Danielle didn't move. "Then check the VIN. The registration's right there in your hand." But the officer didn't even glance at it. Instead, He leaned in slightly. His breath smelled of stale coffee and chewing tobacco. "You think I haven't heard every excuse in the book?" he sneered. "People like you always got a story." Danielle felt the old, familiar heat in her chest. People like you. It was always unspoken, but today, he said the quiet part out loud. "This isn't a story. This is my car. Check the paperwork. Don't tell me how to do my job." Another cruiser rolled into the lot. 2 more officers stepped out, gloves already pulled over their hands. Danielle saw one of them glance at her, then at the tall officer, waiting for direction. No one asked questions. No one paused to confirm facts. "Looks like we've got ourselves a situation," the newcomer muttered, approaching. "I want to call my lawyer." "No phones." The younger officer's hand shot out, gripping her wrist as she reached for her purse. "That's resisting." "I'm reaching for my phone. That's not resisting." But her voice was swallowed by the sound of another cruiser pulling in. Now there were 4. The lot, quiet just minutes ago, was starting to fill with curious bystanders. She locked eyes with a man holding a phone across the street, recording. Good. Someone had to. The tall officer leaned closer again, lowering his voice. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop playing games. You're going to do exactly what we say, or this ends badly." Danielle inhaled sharply. "Officer, you're making a serious mistake." His lips curled into a smirk. "You'll find out who's making a mistake soon enough." She already knew who was making it, and she already knew how it would end. But they didn't. "You say the car's stolen. Run the plates." Danielle's voice was steady, not loud, not emotional, just facts. But the tall officer didn't flinch. He waved toward the arriving backup like he hadn't even heard her. "We'll handle that. For now, hands where I can see them." The younger officer stepped forward and grabbed her elbow without warning. His grip was too tight, deliberate. He wasn't detaining her. He was trying to send a message. "Hey!" She pulled her arm back instinctively. "Wrong move." The tall officer shouted, "That's it. Turn around. Hands behind your back. I'm not under arrest. You haven't even told me what I've done." Refusing to comply. Interfering with police investigation. He rattled off the words like they were part of a script he'd said 1,000 times before. And now, resisting. 2 more hands grabbed her from behind. Cold cuffs snapped against her wrists again, this time tighter. The crowd on the sidewalk had grown. Some lifted their phones higher, recording every second. Others just stood frozen, silent. No one moved to help, because they'd seen this before. "She didn't do anything," a woman called out from the curb. "Stay back," the younger officer barked. Danielle looked to the bystanders, trying to catch someone's eye. Anyone. Remember these faces. Remember this moment. "Sir, you have her ID and registration," someone else said. "You can check that in 2 minutes." "I said stay back." The tall officer pushed her forward. She stumbled against the hood again. The surface burned hot from the morning sun. "Record this," Danielle shouted. "All of it." The younger cop grabbed her phone from where it lay on the passenger seat. He held it up, then dropped it face down on the ground. "You won't be needing this. That's illegal. You just seized private property. You people always think you know the law." Those 2 words, you people. They weren't just detaining her now, they were humiliating her. On purpose. "Car's registered to her, Sarge," one of the new officers finally called out, glancing at the documents. A pause. The tall officer hesitated. "She could have forged those papers." "She didn't," the new officer said quietly. "Name matches, plate matches, no reports of theft. We'll decide that at the station." Danielle's pulse raced. They had the truth in front of them, and they didn't care. This wasn't about a stolen car. It wasn't even about the law anymore. It was about power. And the people who refused to give it up, even when they were wrong. The cuffs tightened until Danielle could barely feel her hands. The metal bit into her skin, sharp and unrelenting. She kept her head high, even as the tall officer forced her toward the back of the squad car. "You can't arrest me for owning my own car," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "We can arrest you for resisting," he shot back. "And we will." The younger officer yanked the back door open. Danielle noticed his hand still hovered near his weapon, even now, even after the registration cleared. That's when she knew. This wasn't about the car. It was never about the car. "You planning to charge me with anything real?" she asked. The tall officer leaned in. His eyes, finally visible behind those mirrored lenses, were cold. "Charge you?" His voice dropped to a low, mocking whisper. "Oh no, ma'am. We're gonna teach you a lesson. People like you always need one." Danielle's jaw clenched. She could feel every pair of eyes from the sidewalk. Strangers, witnesses, some sympathetic, some fearful, some just recording for their social feeds. But no one moved to stop what was happening. "Let her go!" someone finally shouted from the crowd. A woman's voice. Strong, furious. The tall officer ignored it. "Get in the car." Danielle didn't move. "I said get in." "I will not." "Oh, you will." He shoved her. Hard. She stumbled, striking her shoulder against the door frame. Pain radiated down her side. The younger officer grabbed her by the arms to force her into the back seat. Danielle locked her feet to the pavement. She wasn't resisting to fight. She was resisting because once that door shut, the narrative would be entirely theirs. "You're escalating this," she warned. "Think carefully. We don't take orders from criminals." Her phone lay broken on the pavement nearby, cracks spiderwebbed across the screen. She had no way to call her brother, no way to reach anyone. But even without her phone, there was still one card to play. The tall officer sneered, inches from her face now. "You think some judge is gonna care? You think anybody's coming to save you?" Danielle met his eyes without flinching. "No judge." A pause. "But someone much higher." He laughed. A harsh, barking sound. "Higher than a judge? Please. Call my brother." Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Now." The younger officer chuckled. "What? He a lawyer or something?" Danielle smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No. He's the police commissioner." And for the first time that morning, the officers froze. The air shifted, like the sudden stillness before a storm. "What did you just say?" The tall officer's voice dropped, tight and suspicious. "You heard me." Danielle's eyes were cold now, unyielding. "Police Commissioner Carter, my brother." The younger officer's hand slowly dropped from his holster. His smirk was gone, replaced by something else. Doubt. "You expect us to believe that?" the tall officer scoffed. "Nice try. Everybody's somebody's cousin when they get caught. I don't care what you believe. Call dispatch. Give them my name, Danielle Carter. Tell them to confirm it." The officers exchanged glances. For the first time all morning, they weren't sure of themselves. The tall one hesitated, then barked over his shoulder. "Martinez, run her name. Now." The officer by the squad car fumbled with his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 417. Need to confirm on Danielle Carter. Claims relation to Police Commissioner Carter. Advise." The radio crackled. Static. A long pause. "Stand by, 417. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The crowd sensed something had changed. Camera stayed up, but now people were murmuring. Commissioner Carter? Even those who didn't know him personally knew the name. Everyone did. "This some kind of joke?" the younger officer muttered, but his voice lacked the bite from earlier. "No joke." Danielle stared him down. "And you just made the worst mistake of your career." 417, dispatch. The voice finally came through the radio. "Go ahead." "Confirmed. Danielle Carter. She is the police commissioner's sister." Silence. Utter, suffocating silence. The tall officer's jaw locked, his face drained of color. The younger officer took a step back like he'd touched something burning. Further instruction coming. The radio went quiet again, but the damage was done. The bystanders, once cautious, uncertain, were wide-eyed. Some lowered their phones slowly, exchanging shocked glances. Others kept filming. Now they knew this wasn't just an ordinary stop. "Uncuff her!" The tall officer's voice cracked. It wasn't a command. It was desperation. The younger one hesitated. "Do it." Cold steel unlocked. The cuffs fell away. Danielle rubbed her wrists, the skin red and raw. "I told you," she said quietly. "You didn't want to do this." But they had. And now they were going to pay for it. The cuffs clattered to the pavement. Danielle didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just stood there, letting the sting fade from her wrists. But her eyes never left the tall officer. Not for a second. "You didn't want to do this," she repeated, her voice low but steady. "But now it's too late." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the street like he wanted to disappear into the growing crowd. We can sort this out," he stammered. "We thought—" "No," Danielle interrupted sharply. "You didn't think at all." The dispatch radio crackled again. "Unit 417, hold position. Commissioner Carter en route. ETA 3 minutes." The tall officer's face froze. The blood drained from his cheeks. "He's coming here?" "That's what happens when you harass his family," Danielle said coldly. The other officers were already straightening up, exchanging nervous glances. The bravado was gone, replaced by something Danielle recognized all too well: fear. Not fear of her. Fear of what was coming. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not the rushed, chaotic sound of a typical patrol. No, this was deliberate, controlled. A black SUV rolled into the lot, tires crunching against gravel. The tinted windows reflected the crowd, the cameras, the very officers who had laughed at her minutes ago. The door swung open. Commissioner James Carter stepped out, his uniform immaculate, silver badge gleaming in the sunlight, his expression unreadable, hard. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the bystanders seemed to hold their breath. "What's going on here?" His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that made grown men nervous. The tall officer tried to speak, but no words came out. His mouth opened, closed. Danielle didn't look at her brother. She kept her eyes on the officers who'd cuffed her, grabbed her, humiliated her. "They accused me of stealing my own car. They ignored my registration. They broke my phone, and they put me in cuffs." The commissioner's gaze didn't waver. "Badge numbers. Sir, now." The tall officer mumbled his badge number. The others followed suit, voices shaky. "Thank you," Commissioner Carter said quietly. He turned to Danielle. "Are you hurt?" "Just my wrists. And my patience." His jaw tightened. "You'll be filing a report. Official misconduct." "Already done. The whole thing's recorded." She nodded toward the crowd. "Plenty of witnesses." Commissioner Carter turned back to the officers. "You three are relieved of duty. Effective immediately. Turn in your weapons and badges." The tall officer looked like he wanted to protest, but the words died in his throat. He knew. They all knew. This wasn't salvageable. "Escort them to internal affairs," the commissioner ordered. Two senior officers approached, their faces grim. As the disgraced officers were led away, Danielle finally exhaled. The power had shifted, completely. And it wasn't shifting back. The lot buzzed with low murmurs as the disgraced officers were marched away in front of everyone. No sirens, no shouting. Just the slow, humiliating walk past the phones, the cameras, and the cold, judging stares. The tall officer, the one who had cuffed her, shoved her, humiliated her, tried to hide his face behind his hand. It didn't matter. The videos were already live. His name, his badge, his actions, exposed. Commissioner Carter turned to the crowd. His voice carried, low but firm. "If anyone witnessed the events that occurred here, I encourage you to come forward. Your statements will be protected. No retaliation will be tolerated. A few people nodded. Others stepped closer, emboldened by what they'd just seen. A man with a camera lifted it higher, catching every second. Danielle noticed the younger officer, the one who smashed her phone, lagging behind the others. He looked like he wanted to beg, plead, offer excuses. She didn't even look at him. He wasn't worth it. Dispatch crackled again through one of the squad radios left behind. The operator sounded tense. "Commissioner, news outlets are requesting a statement. Footage from the scene is spreading fast." Of course it was. In a world where injustice too often got swept under the rug, today it wasn't getting buried. It was blowing up. Danielle bent down and picked up her broken phone. The glass was shattered, but the screen flickered weakly to life. Good enough. She opened her camera and panned it across the scene herself. The empty cuffs on the ground, the abandoned squad cars, the officers being loaded into unmarked cruisers like suspects. Symbolic and deserved. Commissioner Carter approached her, voice low so only she could hear. "You want to press charges personally? You'd have every right." Danielle considered it for a long moment. The crowd, the broken phone in her hand, the ache in her wrists, they all whispered yes. But she shook her head. No. No? I don't need a courtroom to prove who they really are. Her brother smiled grimly. He understood. Justice wasn't always about trials and verdicts. Sometimes, justice was about truth laid bare. Unavoidable, undeniable, unforgettable. The commissioner nodded once, then louder for the crowd to hear. These officers violated their oath today, and they will answer for it, publicly and permanently. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't raucous. It was quiet, heavy, real. A sound Danielle would never forget. And neither would the men who thought they could erase her dignity with a pair of handcuffs. The officers were gone. The squad cars sat abandoned, doors still hanging open, but the crowd remained. People weren't just watching anymore. They were participating, witnessing. Danielle stood beside her brother, facing them all. "This happens every day," she said, raising her voice just enough to carry across the lot. "Most of the time, there's no camera, no witnesses, no commissioner showing up in time." She paused, let the weight of those words settle. "But today, we caught it, and we're not letting it slide." A murmur rippled through the bystanders. Some nodded, others just held their phones higher, capturing every word. Commissioner Carter stepped forward. His uniform seemed heavier now, as if the badge itself carried not just authority but accountability. "An internal review has already begun," he announced. "Those officers violated department policy. They violated civil rights, and they violated human decency." He swept his gaze across the crowd. They assumed their badges would protect them from consequences. They were wrong. A woman from the crowd spoke up. "What happens next?" "Transparency," the commissioner replied. "A full report will be released to the public. No cover-ups, no closed doors." Another voice. "Are they fired?" "They are suspended without pay, pending formal termination and civil action." Danielle folded her arms, standing tall. "And every officer on this force will now receive mandatory bias and de-escalation retraining, starting today." The commissioner nodded. "Policy changes, department-wide." A ripple of relief and quiet pride moved through the crowd. For once, change wasn't just promised. It was happening, visible, immediate. Danielle's eyes landed on the cracked phone still in her hand. The device was broken, but the story it held was not. "And one more thing," she added. "If anyone wants a copy of the footage for their own records, come see me." A dozen hands went up at once. The power that had been stolen from her this morning, she was taking it back. Not just for herself, for everyone who ever stood cuffed and voiceless in a parking lot, on a sidewalk, on their own front lawn. The commissioner looked at her, quiet pride in his eyes. "You flipped the script today, sis." "No," Danielle replied. "We flipped it, together." The crowd had started to thin. Some people left quietly, satisfied. Others lingered, not wanting to break the weight of what had just unfolded. Danielle stayed by her car, arms crossed, eyes scanning the lot that had become a battleground and a courtroom. The irony wasn't lost on her. She came here for a coffee, a quiet moment before work. Now, she stood at the center of a reckoning. Her brother moved beside her. Not the commissioner now, just James. "I shouldn't have had to come out here," he said softly. "I know. And you shouldn't have had to defend yourself alone." "I wasn't alone." Danielle nodded toward the bystanders who had stayed. They helped. They all helped. James followed her gaze. Some of those strangers were still filming, but their posture had changed. This wasn't just viral content anymore. It was history, testimony. "Most people in your position," James said, "would have backed down. You didn't." "Most people in their position," Danielle replied, "would have apologized. They didn't." Silence. Not awkward, heavy, full of understanding. "This isn't just about today," James continued. "It's about what happens tomorrow and every day after that." Danielle nodded. "Then we make sure this doesn't fade away. Not this time." Across the lot, a young boy, no older than 12, stood with his mother. He wasn't holding a phone. He wasn't watching for drama. He was just watching, eyes wide, silent, learning. Danielle caught his gaze and smiled softly. "They saw everything," she whispered. "Good," James answered, "because next time, there won't be a next time." For once, Danielle allowed herself to believe it. Not because the system had changed, but because the people watching were ready to change it. And this, today, was the first crack in the wall. The lot was almost empty now. Just Danielle, her brother, and the last of the witnesses who refused to look away. She crouched slowly, picking up the broken pieces of her phone. The shattered glass reflected the sky above, clear, blue, open. For a brief moment, she thought about replacing it, buying a new one, moving on. But she didn't. She held the ruined phone up to James. "I'm keeping it." "Why?" he asked. "Because this is what they tried to silence." She turned it over in her palm. "And I want to remember how fragile the truth can feel, until you fight for it." James nodded. "And because next time," Danielle added, "they won't be the ones writing the story." A breeze swept across the lot. The police, SUV, the crowd, the noise, all faded into the distance. But the boy and his mother were still there, watching, listening. Danielle met his eyes one last time. "Remember what you saw today," she told him quietly. "Never stop recording. Never stop speaking, no matter who tries to stop you." He nodded solemnly. As the commissioner's team packed up the last of the scene, Danielle looked down at the cold coffee cup still lying near the curb. Untouched, forgotten. She didn't pick it up. She didn't need it anymore. Her morning had started with quiet routine. It ended with a revolution,